Today we're doing some 5-ingredient high-protein meal prep, but for full transparency, we're not including oil, salt, or pepper in that 5 because, I mean, they're not really ingredients, right? Everyone's got those. Also, it would be more difficult. I actually didn't use salt, but that's a personal choice. I'll leave it to you. It's all personal choices, really, isn't it? So I didn't actually intend on doing this on a budget. However, here is my receipt, and it did cost me £36.72 to make 15 meals. So that's a cost of £2.44 per meal. However, I had a lot of stuff left over, which I either have used or will use. So my true proportional cost was £1.75 per meal. And I wasn't even really trying to do this as cheaply as possible. I think if you went to Aldi instead of Tesco and you did seek out those cheapest options for each ingredient, you could probably get this down to about £1.50 per meal. I reckon that is decent. That was a fun jump. First up, we're doing chicken and veg Chorizo Traybake, and for that you will need chicken. I have bone-in and skin-on thighs. You could use skinless and boneless if you wanted to lower the calories. It just won't be as good, so don't. You'll also need some sweet potato, aubergine, or eggplant for everyone else, chickpeas, and then you just need some flavor. I went with this Chorizo spice mix, but honestly, you can go into your supermarket and grab anything you like. Lots of options. I just chose this one. First, trim some of the excess skin off those thighs. I'm putting a lot of these into one pan, and if I left them all untrimmed, it would just be swimming in too much fat. I do want some fat, I just don't want all the fat. Something like that looks ideal, and then just place those into a bowl. Drizzle of olive oil is optional, and lightly cover with your spice mix. Make sure you have a good even coating, and then place those off to the side and preheat your oven. Chop that sweet potato into roughly even cubes. I'm leaving the skin on because that's the best bit. And I'm going with something around this size, which again is your prerogative, provided you adjust your cooking time accordingly. I'm using this dish, by the way, just because it's the biggest one I own. Still not really big enough because I'm cooking 5 portions here, which will inevitably mean a bit of overcrowding, but we move. Sweet potato goes in here, and then I'm going to slice up my aubergine whilst I'm here. Again, looking for roughly even thicknesses. And then place those off to the side and grab your sweet potato once more. Drizzle that with a nice, healthy, non-optional splash of olive oil, followed by a light coating of your spice mix. Then just slap it in the oven. By slap, I obviously mean place gently. Next, we want a high heat and your largest available pan. I used a little spray of avocado oil, but on reflection, that was wholly unnecessary, just to force a habit. And it was unnecessary because we're going to place those thighs skin side down in the pan. Don't overcrowd it. I did this in 2 batches and also resist any urge to poke stuff around. That is really my own main challenge as a cook, learning to just leave stuff alone for a bit. The aim here isn't to cook the thighs through, but just to seal and get some colour. The fat will spit, so a pan with higher sides like this one will somewhat minimise the mess, but I mean, you're still going to have to clean your kitchen, aren't you? So it makes no difference really. Unless obviously you live in squalor and don't. Once they've got some colour, flip them over and then give them another 3 to 5 minutes and then just remove them from the pan and onto a plate. After about 20 minutes, pull the tray out of the oven and add your chicken thighs. Now I'm giving these a while in the oven because bone-in thighs will take longer, so if you have boneless, you'll have to adjust it a little. Stick that back in the oven and then drain your chickpeas and give those a little rinse. Another 20 minutes later, you'll pull your tray back out of the oven. Now you can add your aubergine first, then chickpeas, then a final drizzle of olive oil and a dusting of spice mix. As you can see, there's a lot of food in this tray, which means sadly your sweet potato is not going to go crispy, but even if it did, it wouldn't survive the refrigeration and reheating process anyway, so don't worry about it. Chickpeas will still give you a bit of texture. Back into the oven for a final 20 minutes and we are done. Now, although we don't have crispy sweet potato, we do have this nice, shiny, fatty, sweet glaze as a result of them just sitting on the bottom of that pan for an hour. That's good stuff. I'm keeping these in the fridge. I would not recommend this one for freezing because there's just too much water content. Things are going to get mushy real fast. All right, that's meal 1 done. Let's move on. This is an ad, but it's for my own app, so don't know if I have to declare that as an ad. Let's just say I do. Just be safe, mate. It's also a PSA for current push users. As of January the 1st, your app is going to look quite different. Along with a complete redesign, we're bringing in a load of new features like drop sets, supersets, option to store multiple programs, just loads of stuff that you've been asking for and that we've been promising. So I'll go into more detail closer to the time. As of now, just be ready. If you're not a current app user, we do have a Black Friday sale live as of now through the link in the description, so you can check it out. Get a 7-day free trial, and if you like it, lock in that sale price. Just be aware that as of Jan 1st, stuff gonna change, mate, so don't get too comfy, you know what I mean? It's coming, stuff coming, good stuff. I mean, I think it's good now, otherwise I wouldn't tell you to do a trial now. People think it's good, but it's gonna be better. That's the whole point, innit? It's the whole point of life, really. Just get better. Next up, we're making a chicken and mushroom risotto, for which you'll need risotto rice, chicken. I've used breast here, but really, I'm just humouring my fitness audience. Boneless thighs would have been better. Mushrooms, I got chestnut because they were on offer. Veg stock, you could use chicken stock if you already have it. And some Parmesan cheese. Again, pecorino, grana padano, anything like that would be fine. First up, wash the soil off your mushrooms because this isn't 6-ingredient meal prep, and then slice into a thickness that is proportional to the resulting total surface area of the mushroom versus that of your frying pan, basically just so they'll fit in your pan. Next, dice your chicken into roughly even chunks. Smaller actually is usually better for meal prep because I find it's just more palatable when it's been frozen and reheated, which is an option with this meal, but I was just lazy. Now into a hot pan, place your mushrooms. Practice not touching them for a couple of minutes before flipping to get some colour on the other side. When you have achieved said colour, remove and put them onto a plate. Then add your chicken breast into the same pan as before. We don't need to cook this through because it will finish off in our risotto later, so we're just trying to get a bit of colour in some kind of attempt to squeeze every last potential bit of flavour out of what is essentially a very dull and neutral protein source. I'm giving this a good season with some pepper. You might want to use some salt, but bear in mind that we'll be cooking our risotto in veg stock, so you might not need it. Probably won't need it, to be honest. Again, once we have some colour, just remove it and leave it on a plate off to the side. Next, you can prep your veg stock, and then in the same pan, we want a good drizzle of olive oil, followed by your risotto rice. I'm not weighing stuff out because I'm not tracking my calories, but I used about half of a kilogram bag and I made 5 portions, so about 100 grams of rice per portion, which does turn out to be fairly substantial. Give your rice a good coating and fry for 2 to 3 minutes before pouring in enough liquid to cover everything. Whilst that's simmering, I'm going to grate some parmesan. Again, no idea how much really. Not enough is probably the answer to that. Definitely don't be shy with it anyway, because this does provide quite a bit of flavour to the dish. You want this on a fairly gentle simmer, and then just top up your liquid every time some rice is emerging from the surface. After 10 minutes or so, the chicken plus chicken juice can enter the chat, along with mushrooms plus mushroom juice, which sounds vile, but I mean, I guess it might be vile on its own. Anyway, also your cheese. Submerge your chicken just to make sure it cooks through. Then just keep simmering and adding stock until your rice is cooked, which you would check by eating some, and your chicken is cooked, which you either don't check if you've cooked chicken before and believe in your ability to not poison yourself, or you do check by cutting through the thickest piece. Then just time to plate it up. Obviously let it cool before putting it in the fridge or freezer. As I said, you can freeze these and they should survive fairly well. Finally, we're making a tomato-y beef and chorizo pasta bake, for which you will need pasta. I used macaroni, but basically anything small with a low degree of tessellation will be fine. Passata, I've got this one with garlic and herbs because we're using 5 ingredients, you know what I'm saying? We need all the flavour we can get. Beef mince, really the king of meal prep protein sources because it survives freezing and reheating so well. Some cheese, I went with extra mature cheddar, but anything with a bit of strength will do. Just don't use something impotent like mozzarella or ricotta. The parmesan from the last recipe would have been fine if you're making both. Then we really need to inject a bit of flavour, and for that I chose this spicy chorizo. I'm pretty sure that does come with like a free cancer diagnosis in like 5 years time, so if you want to use something else, maybe some sun-dried tomatoes or some black olives, you just need something punchy, you know what I mean? So first up, slice your chorizo. You don't need much because it's so flavourful and you don't need big chunks. I used just under half of this, and honestly I could have used less. Same trusty pan as the previous recipes, Marks & Spencer if you're wondering, and then you want a high heat so we can brown this mince. I'm using 5% fat, so it's kind of lean, but we can still get some colour. Break that up a bit, and then once more, we practice not poking stuff for a few minutes before then finally poking stuff so that we can get some colour on the other side. Make a clearing and add in your chorizo pieces, and then put your pasta into a saucepan. Again, I'm just eyeballing stuff because it's 2 months into Christmas, no point starting tracking calories now, eh? Pasta goes on, and then we preheat the oven to 200 degrees. This chorizo should now also be getting a nice bit of colour so we can add in our passata. I used about 1.5 of those cartons, and then I turned the heat right down and placed the lid on because I don't want it to reduce too much. Grate your cheese. Again, don't be shy, you want enough to cover the whole thing. And then when your pasta has achieved just less than al dente status, I would remove it and drain. Now, there are a few ways you can do this. You can cook it through and then just melt your cheese and crisp things up in the oven. You can not cook it at all and add water like a traditional pasta bake, so it cooks entirely in the oven. I went for a kind of in-between approach. Pasta goes into your oven dish, followed by your sauce and meat. Give that mix around, and then I added a splash of boiling water so that when you've added the cheese, that'll melt, create a bit of a steam barrier, and our pasta will reach completion in the oven. I gave that about 15 minutes, and then when it was done, it looked like this, or the other way around. When it looks like this, it's done. Unfortunately, I've used all my other meal prep containers by now, so I've got to use these stupid ones with the different compartments. Not really sure why they exist other than for 7-year-olds who don't like the beans touching other things. Anyway, it works all the same. Now, of the 3 meals we've made today, this one probably my favorite just for the sheer simplicity, but also because it's definitely most suited to storage. Whether you eat this immediately or after it's been fridge or freezer, you're essentially going to have the same experience, and I think that is the hallmark of a good meal prep meal. All right, we're out. Bye. Like my video. Just do all the other stuff, please. Generally do stuff. Do things. Bye.
See me rolling. Hey, hey.